This conference is brought to you by CallStack, a total software engineering consultancy.
Hello, everyone. Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Federica. I work at the Linux Foundation Europe, and I already have a good news because we are the only obstacle to the party and the beer and the aperitivo. So that's already good. I will be very short and sweet because here, as the Linux Foundation Europe, I'm here to support one of the hundreds of projects, open source, that are hosted there, and it is Open Mobile Hub. But I just wanted to remind you that if you use open source in your daily job, having a foundation that takes care of the open collaboration is super important. And yeah, I cannot wait to learn more about Open Mobile Hub from the core development team. I will leave it to Preston.
Thank you so much. Well, before you go off stage, I want to say something. Without Linux Foundation Europe support and CallStack support, this project will not happen. So please give them a round of applause, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one thing also, you look at my T-shirt, we also have hoodies. So please come to the end of the hall and find the booth. Federico will be there, so get one of the T-shirt and a hoodie and be part of the team. So let's get started. Thank you. All right. So before we begin, let me give you a little bit of my background. I started this project about 1.5 years ago. I'm the technical steering committee chair for this project. My background, I used to work for Google. I used to work for Qualcomm and some of the tech company for many years. And also used to work for a satellite company. I actually worked for SpaceX. So I'm in tech industry for my entire life. And I understand there's some pain point I could possibly help. So my question, first question, raise your hand. Who actually developed mobile ads using React Native? Wow, pretty much the entire audience. That's great. Because these projects that we develop, I think will be able to help you. So let me go through the entire project from beginning to end and showing you what we can help you. I think you'll appreciate what we have done. So from what we understand, there are basically two main challenges that mobile ad developers are facing today. So one of them, consistent user experience. How to make sure the app you develop actually run on all these different type of devices, different operating systems. And the second problem, most developers are always saying, can I develop once and able to run my apps on all these devices consistently without duplicating all these efforts? So these are pretty much the high-level two top challenges people face. But look at the market today. There's a major fragmentation in terms of mobile operating systems. Of course, there's Android, which is from Google, developing and many people using it. But also at the same time, Google is very nice. They open source, AOSP. And a lot of companies take advantage of that. So they're taking the AOSP open source from Google, basically have their own variant, including companies like Huawei, for example. We developed the EMUI, and also, obviously, a lot of these open source operating systems based on AOSP. And on top of that, there's also a company like Apple developing their own iOS version, and Huawei developed a Harmony OS. So looking at this from a developer perspective, it is a mess, making sure that consistent user interfaces and also cross-platform support about all these is very challenging. What are the problems that developers would typically see? So I'll highlight some typical issues that we saw also. For example, when developers develop the apps, assuming Google GMS service available, when the consumer download the app, run it, they may encounter this issue if the device actually doesn't even have the GMS library on it. For example, a lot of the AOSP devices does not have GMS. Like devices like based on AOSP from Amazon, Fire OS, does not have GMS. Like from Meta, the Meta Quest, the VR headset, based on AOSP, but also does not come with GMS. There's some also operating system from India, Bar OS, also does not have GMS. So they will, when they run the apps on those devices, they will actually get a message. Sorry, there's some problem here. I cannot fulfill your request for Google login authentication. And the second most common problem is the app will actually check and basically come up with this message: missing Google Play services. You cannot proceed. And also another common problem we saw is some of the apps integrated with Google Drive, try to access some data. Unfortunately, when the user uses it, they click on it, there's no response. What's going on? They don't even know what's going on because there's a missing GMS library. And also very common in terms of payment. They're trying to use the in-app payment services from Google. Because of the missing GMS library, they cannot even fulfill the payment operation. So these are very common problems. But actually look at the market today. These are all the popular brands that you probably are using and putting in your pocket right now. These are the popular brands that are running very different types of operating systems. But unfortunately, I think we can actually categorize into 4 different groups. Number 1 is Google Android with the Google GMS services. And the second group is Android based on AOSP does not actually come with GMS. And the third one is Apple iOS, and the fourth one is Harmony OS, which is basically the third ecosystems outside Android and iOS. So if you look at the whole picture, this is actually exactly why we developed the Open Mobile Hub project, is to basically solving these 2 main issues that we saw. So how are we actually doing that? So let me go through step by step. So number 1, app developer actually need to integrate with the OMH library first. Once it's integrated, available in the App Store, when the consumer download it and run it at runtime, OMH will actually determine the device type. Does it actually have the GMS library installed already on the device or not? If the answer is yes, of course, then we'll just pass through the request over to GMS library to fulfill the request. But however, if the GMS library is missing, what OMH actually does is to make sure that we are using alternative methods to fulfill the request. How we're doing it, for example, we're not using the GMS library, but we're actually using the web API for the Google authentication, which fulfill the same function, but actually an alternative means. And we are making sure from an OMH perspective, the user experience is maintained and consistent, even though there's no GMS library on it. And for maps, for example, Google Maps, of course, we pass it to Google Maps if there's a GMS library on it. But if not, what we will do, we use other maps. There's a lot of other maps available in the market, OpenStreetMap, for example. And the good thing is, of course, our future roadmap will be also supporting the third ecosystems, which is Harmony OS. So we'll be able to support multiple ecosystems, multiple OS from the same framework. So let's continue looking at the benefits. So I think I pretty much highlighted some of the major benefits earlier in the slides. But the most important part is the open mobile ecosystems. I think that's everybody is talking about nowadays. Also, is it's also one of the things that offer non-restricted tools and services for apps developer. And of course, open source. I mean, it doesn't need to emphasize that. Everybody knows all the benefits, like high quality, flexibility in terms of security and also compliance. And I think most importantly, I think people are kind of missing this point also. There's a lot of devices, as I mentioned earlier. All those devices I mentioned, there's not a GMS library on it. Those are the potential opportunity for app developer. So they can reach all these global users and then able to address those using the OMH library. So looking at the partnership with Linux Foundation Europe, I mean, they are hosting the project. They own the entire project. But also under Linux Foundation Europe, there's a lot of other open source projects that we are working with. For example, the Open Wallet Foundation, which basically the mission is to create open source solutions in terms of payment and making sure that this multi-purpose wallet that anybody can use and build and basically run on all types of devices. And amazingly, I mean, we are one of the supporters, of course. We have talked to them many times. Potentially, we could actually implement Open Wallet Foundation as part of the in-app payment services as part of OMH. So there are big companies supporting it, Accenture, Google, Futurewei, Visa, American Express, Microsoft, for example. And then other groups also under Linux Foundation Europe is actually OvertureMap. So OvertureMap is actually very interesting. They are not doing any open source code in terms of coding. They're using open map data. So they defined all the entity references in terms of quality assurance process, in terms of the structured data schema. They're actually coming up with high-quality map data that anybody can use. So it's founded by Meta, all these big companies, Amazon, Microsoft, TomTom. So we have a lot of discussion with that group as well, and we're also looking at how to support that as one of the map options and features within OMH. So these are all the alignment and also benefit they're working with. So what we have done so far in OMH, I think we started the project, as I mentioned, I started the project about 1.5 years ago. So last year, we delivered OMH 1.0. So 1.0 offer these 3 major features: login authentication, maps, and also storage. So that was launched last year on GitHub. Anybody can access the source code. So this year, today, we're actually launching the final modules of React Native. That's why we're here in this React Native conference, is to launch the final module, React Native, for OMH in 2.0 on GitHub. So you'll be able to check it out actually after the show. And also, of course, with that, also additional number of plugin. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And in the future, we have some roadmap discussion as part of the TSC meeting, technical steering committee discussions. We're looking at supporting like mobile ads, in-app payment, app security, HarmonyOS next, Flutter, and also Expo, which is also very important. We have a lot of great discussion with the Expo team here at the show as well. So we're also looking at how we can actually make this OMX framework fully compatible with Expo, that a lot more Expo community can actually make use of this framework. So we are looking forward to that. And in terms of plugin, so these are some of the core plugins that we'll make available as part of the release. For example, on Maps, we have Google Maps, Azure Map from Microsoft, Mapbox, OpenStreetMap, and Apple Maps. On authentication, we're already supporting Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and Dropbox login. And then on cloud storage, we support Google Drive, OneDrive, and Dropbox. So these are pretty much most of the popular services that consumers typically use. But that's why we are also here, is to encourage. A lot of you are big developer for open source project as well. If you can also contribute to add on to this, to support some new services, third-party services, and make it easily available for the app developer, we'd love to have you joining us as part of this project to help out. Give you some examples. Actually, what we have done, also with some of the integration with some actual apps. You can see we actually integrated with WordPress and Rocket Chat. Before the integration with OMH, for example, there will be error messages saying, hey, I can't do the Google login authentication because of the GMS library. But after the integration, of course, it's fully compatible. We also tested the same functionality on Rocket Chat as well. So it's actually make the integration and user experience much more consistent. And look at also Maps. Maps, we integrated with Signal and also Expensify. So you can see on the left side, before the OMH integration, when the Signal app is running on non-GMS devices, you see the error message at the top. The user experience is very bad. I mean, the user don't know what to do and why is it not functioning. After integration of OMH map, in the middle, you can see basically users are able to exchange their locations, able to see the map, and all this, basically fully compatible and consistent with other devices, exactly the same. And similar with Expensify. You can see basically when people submit expenses, they can use OMH to able to draw out the map here and showing where the expenses actually took place. So these are the sample apps, actually actual apps that integrated with OMH and showcasing what are the benefits of the integration. The last part I want to mention is I'm the chair of the technical steering committee. We have regular meetings. So every month, the first Wednesday, we have the meeting, talk about the roadmap, talk about some of the proposals we received, making sure the team actually agree with the directions, and also communicating with all the external parties. So myself, along with 4 other companies, we are the 5 voting members. So these are the meetings on Wednesday. It's actually all this information available on GitHub. Please go to the GitHub page, github.com/openmobilehub. Check out the schedule. If you think you actually have something you want to contribute and support the project, please do. Please join our discussion and basically bring up your idea. And also, please give us a star if you like this project. If you want this project to continue growing, please give us a star. That will be very helpful. And then with that, I will pass it to my colleague, Diego. He will basically go through a lot of the technical details and show you a demo, how this framework actually works. All right. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, I see the front row, everybody. The team that has supported us, but I have a slide for you. Yes, my name is Diego. I am the lead, the technical solution engineering team at Open Mobile Hub. My background is in the software engineering team. I was at Google and the Android developer relations team on the Android side. So that's the main reason that I'm here on this project, because I understand the pains that the developers run into when building apps. So I'm going to first, before getting into the details, set the context, because it's not immediately evident for developers to realize that the challenges that everybody runs into, but I'm pretty sure that you empathize with these issues. So the first one is, let's kind of like start building up what's going on when you are developed for Android, right? So on Android, you have the open source version of Android AOSP, which is like many layers of complexity, right? So this is really, but at the end of the day, the good thing is it's a monolith code base that pretty much on many different architectures. The challenge comes, and this is open source, but the challenge comes when the Google Play services comes into play. And honestly, as a developer, sometimes you don't realize that you are building and tightly coupling your apps for Google only. Even though you are building for Android, you are actually building specifically for Google and only one version of Android, which is the one that runs on Pixel devices, Samsung devices, and many other OEMs, right? So at the end, what you end up having is these Google-specific SDKs. Your app is completely coupled with these SDKs. So then you start kind of like thinking, okay, how do I support other developers in other regions that build for other devices that don't have GMS, right? So in this case, this is when many OEMs, manufacturers, have SDKs that are specific for each device, right? So Amazon have SDKs, Samsung have SDKs, Huawei, and so on. And that's great that you have all these capabilities. Let me pause for a second. All right, there you go. So the main challenge then is for developers, right? You have to build, I don't know how many APKs that you have to build for each platform. Even though you have a lot of abstraction on top of React Native, it's still very painful. Even though you have React Native that is supposed to resolve these challenges, the problem is still there. There are many fragmentation, and there are many modules that still don't support GMS, right? So now, when we go into I'm sorry, the animations are not playing, so this is not fun as I was thinking it would be. But the idea is that when you build then for independent OEMs, you think, hey, I'm out of the water. Now I'm able to build apps that are actually completely independent, and you start thinking about Mapbox, you start thinking about Azure Maps, OpenStreetMap, TomTom. But what you end up having is a bigger problem. You end up having APKs that are completely, that you expand the APKs because now you have Google-specific SDKs, manufacturer-specific SDKs, and Google-independent SDKs, OEM-independent SDKs. So it is still a problem to you because if you want to switch from one provider to another, you have to pretty much, again, change your code base, right? So what we envisioned with OMH is now this is the landscape. We have all these shapes and sizes of SDKs with different interfaces. And this is applied in the past, right? In all these different modules. And with OMH, what we envision is to have one view a way to encapsulate all that functionality into a unified interface. The idea is to make sure that this interface is available for React Native, but also on the native side. All right. So with OMH, as I mentioned, we have the challenge is that based on the research that we have done is that native apps are still 70% of the market, unfortunately, or even more, right? So we are not there yet in the cross-platform, right? So there are many challenges, and developers still build apps based on Android, Vue, Jetpack, Compose, and the new kid of the block, Kotlin multi-platform, right? And iOS is the same story with the iOS Swift UI kit, and you name it. So on the cross-platform side, we cite React Native and Flutter as the leader, and also Kotlin multi-platform. And where we see the right fit for OMH is right here in the middle. We need to have one leg on the native side and another leg on the cross-platform side if you really want to tackle these challenges, right? And once we cross the bridge that developers realize that cross-platform is the path to go, then it's going to be, we'll be able to actually, React Native and other cross-platforms will probably, there will be no other alternative, or no other alternative, but native apps will be unnecessary. All right. So now in OMH, we implemented a two-layer architecture. On the level 1, we have interfaces, as I mentioned before, for maps, authentication, and storage. On top of that level, there is the implementation of those interfaces. So for Google Maps, Mapbox, Azure Maps, OpenStreetMap, you have an implementation for each one of these providers. But we made sure that this interface is extensible. So any developer can extend it and build other plugins that are compatible with OMH. The same goes for out and storage. But since the story is about two-layer architecture, we need to go one level up. One level up means that on the cross-platform side, we have, again, the same concept, an interface and plugins on top of it. The idea is that we want to reuse as much as possible the native layer, and the idea is to make sure that this is, again, on the new architecture. So all the modules that have been shipped and that we ship today in OMH 2.0 are compliant with the new architecture. All right, so the next thing is, very quickly, how do you incorporate OMH into your apps? The first thing is bring the module, the core module, which is kind of like the common interfaces, common functionality across all these service providers, and then the specific modules for each one of the providers. Once you have that into your app, you incorporate the client IDs for these apps, for each one of these providers, and then you bring the OMH map view and other providers from the Maps core. Once you have that, then it comes the providers. So this is where OMH is different from other frameworks, even on React Native. The providers are these extensions that you can actually continually extend and incorporate more providers. So in this case, if you want to support GMS, there will be a provider for GMS, but you can change it on the fly. You can actually switch one provider to another. And on the non-GMS side, it's the same thing. You should be able to switch this provider, initialize it with another one. And for iOS provider, we have a different one. All right, so what features do we support in OMH? One is very simple. How do you incorporate it? You use the OMH map view. Other features, we support markers. So we have tried to meet the golden standard that we call it's kind of like the most comprehensive API. Usually it's Google Maps. So, and definitely there are other features from other map providers like Mapbox that have even more features than Google Maps. So we try to merge them as we develop OMH. For polygons, we also support polygons and polylines, right? So this is on the right side, you see a sample. I'm going to play some recording about the sample lab, so I just put it in here just in case we had any issues. All right, in terms of feature parity, this is a challenge, right? Of course, each provider doesn't have the same functionality, right? There are features that, for example, Street View from Google is not available in others. So these are capabilities that are not available. And so that's why we introduce other components and the ability to get access to the under-the-hood classes from the SDKs. And of course, there is more to it. There is more features that are part of the maps, markers, polygon, polylines, but there is much more. So we need to bring more into these modules. But right now, for an MVP, these are the components that we support that we believe is going to cover many of the use cases of our partners. And as I mentioned, there is the plugin escape hatch. With the plugin escape hatch, you have access to these modules. So if in any situation you need to get access to it, it's not ideal, of course. Getting access to escape hatch, that means going kind of like back to square one, where you have to use these modules and then going back to the fragmentation. All right, so I don't have a live demo because this requires connectivity and potentially, yeah, we run into these issues. But the idea was, on the left side, I have a GMS device, non-GMS device. And on the right side, I have a GMS device. So on this is a Huawei device. This is a Pixel device. And the main difference that you will find is that in the sample app is that you have, of course, on the non-GMS device, Google Maps is not available. So we have support for these three map providers. On the right side, you see that Google is available. So the first thing is the functionality that we're talking about is in OpenStreetMaps. We have these providers, and we're going to see that right now we are looking at a map box, and all the functionality that I'm showing in this demo is it's based on leveraging the OMH interface. So we are not touching the SDKs from the vendor. We are leveraging OMH functionality. So in this case, when we go and try the location sharing, we have built a layer on top of it that actually makes an abstraction from that functionality across these providers. So you can see here location sharing. I'm going to switch to another provider. In this case, it is Azure Maps. And you can tell that, yeah, the functionality, I'm able to switch the same map from one provider to another seamlessly without having to actually code anything different in my code base. Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Other features like, yeah, these are markers. In markers, OpenStreetMap is kind of like the main open source SDK. We are leveraging the Android SDK from OpenStreetMaps. And there is more functionality in here that we want to show. Info windows, using info windows, we have support for captions. We have support for functionality to change the size, move the caption around, and interacting with the caption. All right, so then we have the other functionality is more about styling. Of course, this is a very more complex topic, right? Styling requires kind of like an entire language to customize your map. In this case, we are not currently supporting any meta language to support the styling or configuration file. We are still actually leveraging the specific configuration available on those providers. These are polylines. You can tell that you can change the endpoints. You can randomize it. And last but not least, it's the styles, but these are in general styles that are available in this GMS. For this one, the only styling, the one that provides styling is Mapbox. For the other ones, this functionality is not available. So, and these are polygons. So you can change the color. You can draw some holes. And last is the styling. So in this case, yes, it's OpenStreetMap. So I'm switching to Mapbox. And on Mapbox, you can tell that you can switch from dark to retro and silver. All right. So I'm going to show the GMS side. On the GMS side, I'm going to briefly show Google Maps. So the idea for us is developers, you should be able to migrate freely from any provider. So of course, Google Maps, we have support for Google Maps. And this is the map. The same functionality works as what you saw on the non-GMS side. So I'm going to switch back to the presentation. And I know that, yeah, we know that we are new. We are not we come kind of late in the game. There are many modules in the React Native community. But we believe that OMH has a different perspective based on what you previously saw. The first thing is the native side, support for the native side. We want to give like an avenue for developers to move into the cross-platform side. And of course, the non-GMS side. As I mentioned before, for instance, React Native Maps currently supports Google Maps in iOS, Apple Maps, but there is no support for non-GMS. So that's a big miss. We're missing out a huge set of apps or devices. The other one is the expanded support for service providers. As I mentioned before, right now we have support for Azure Maps, Mapbox, OpenStreetMaps. And this, again, this is not only offers capabilities for non-GMS devices, this is also meant for GMS devices. So these are things that you can actually incorporate into this market as well. The other one is the customization and extensibility, right? Since it's based on a common interface, you can bring more service providers into the picture. This was kind of like from the design or principle on OMH was to make it a completely pluggable architecture. And last is definitely, as I mentioned, OMH Maps is new. React Native Maps, it's quite large in the community. And yeah, we are actually, that's why Preston mentioned Expo. We want to be part of Expo or be able to incorporate this to a mainstream framework as well. So we are completely open to actually incorporating this into the existing code bases. But yeah, we are looking forward to ways to bring the community first and get your feedback. All right, so now cloud storage. I'm going to show, again, a little bit of a parallel of a sample app, the sample app that we deliver in our code base. So this is the sample app for storage. In this case, we are showcasing two modules in one app. One is the authentication and the cloud storage SDKs. So in this case, we're going to see we're authenticating with Google Drive. In the case of a non-GMS device, we're using custom tabs, which is the way to authenticate in devices that don't have Google sign-in. So as you can see, I'm able to navigate through Google Drive, retrieve the files from Google Drive. The SDK supports searching capabilities. And I'm also this is the searching capabilities. We're going to showcase in here also how to download files. So in this case, we are only navigating through Google Drive. So I'm going to sign out and showcase it with how it works with OneDrive. All right. In this case, it's also a custom tab. Microsoft has SDKs that are native, that have the native experience. That's why we are showcasing the GMS side as well. In this case, and the last one is Dropbox. With Dropbox, you can authenticate. We are also using the native experience, the SDK for Dropbox on the non-GMS side, since it is compatible and it's using that sign-in window or dialog. So in this case, I'm showcasing that you can create files, you can create folders. In this case, we're creating a folder, React Universe Conference. And in this one, I'm going to switch to Dropbox. And in Dropbox, I'm going to see that that folder has been created. And I'm able to see that RUC has been created. I'm creating now a file that I'm going to synchronize in the next step. Cool. So, and it's good that Dropbox supports non-GMS devices, because we've been finding many gaps in popular apps that actually don't even work on these devices. So in this case, I'm creating a file, a TXT file. I'm going to write something quick, and I'm going back to the storage app. And in the storage app, I see that the app has been reflected. I'm able to fetch the files. In this case, I'm using the module, the OMH Dropbox plugin is actually uses the REST API from Dropbox to fetch the files or to manage any files in Dropbox. All right, so you can see that the file is here, and I'm able to navigate through it. Other functionality that is available in the app is access to the metadata. All these APIs, as I mentioned, leverage the REST API on the non-GMS device. And you can see here that there is support for other features like adding permissions, sharing the files, getting the URL. All right. So now, and then this is the last one is versioning. The SDK also supports versioning across all these different providers. And right here, I'm modifying the file. I'm going to stop here. I think you get the idea of the capabilities of the SDK. On the GMS side, there is also, you can tell that it's using the Google Sign-in native SDKs. On OneDrive, it's also using the Microsoft SDKs. So we try to keep the native experience as close as possible by having separate implementation, even though you could use the non-GMS on a GMS device. Cool. So I'm going to switch. All right. So as Preston mentioned, we are releasing OMH 2.0 today. This has been the work of almost 8 months of releasing and implementing. It's not easy because even though it's a subset of the features, doing this across GMS, non-GMS, and multiple service providers, you can tell that it's kind of like a matrix where you have to implement this capability. So it's very complex. But yeah, so here it is. OMH 2.0 was released, but OMH 2.0, the 3 main modules, and we are looking for your feedback, how we can kind of like evolve these SDKs in a way that is integrated with the direction of the community. So we're looking forward to your feedback. And with that, definitely, on behalf of the OMH team and Linux Foundation, I want to thank you, CallStack, from the PM, the engineering team, the sales team, marketing team. You guys have been awesome. They deserve a round of applause, please.